Right, I'm doing a video in natural daylight. It's been a while since we've done one of these, but what I want to work on today is this sort of hill area on the railway. As you can see, it's been pulled away from the wall, and that can only really be temporary, so I want to go hell for leather and do as much on that as I possibly can. So I've had an idea for the hill section that I'm not entirely sure I've ever seen done before, and that's to use expanding foam to make something a bit natural. So that's what I'm going to try and do. No idea how well it's going to go, but we'll find out, I suppose. A frog in my throat. First off, I've made sort of a rough tunnel mouth, and a couple of these supports are stuck on here. These two aren't, so I'm just going to use some cocktail sticks just to hold these roughly in place. Obviously, when the whole thing has been foamed, it should all hold it together quite well. But I just, for moving it around now reasons, I think it's going to be conducive to sort of doing that. Right, I'm making my first appearance to the camera. Hello. So I'm going to use a bit of kitchen roll just to stop it sort of permanently sticking to the board, and I'm going to just bring this forward a bit, just away from that curtain at the back, and then just going to line the edge sort of with the kitchen roll, just so when it hits the bench or the table, it doesn't immediately sort of join to it. I'm not sure if it would, and I'm sure I could wrench it off if it did, but just to have something to come on to, I suppose. Let's just pull this forward a bit. The whole point of this is when I've had a problem in my house recently. I live in the countryside-ish. I had a rat die, I think, under the floor. We're not actually entirely sure where it died because we never found it. But the whole point is, what we did when we worked out that we couldn't really extract it from wherever it was, is we just ripped the skirting board off of that part of the wall and filled the crack with expanding foam, which sounds quite funny. But when I cut that off, it had offcuts like this, which I just think look a bit natural, almost like rocks or something. So that's my idea, really, is just to use this expanding foam, what's left of it, to try and make some natural sort of rock formations. I'm going to give it a go. I mean, I'm all for failing it. If it fails, it fails. It's all part of learning, I guess. So let's give this a go and see how it goes. Just see if we can get this out without any trouble. There we go. See if any liquid comes out. Right, so this is how these work. If you've ever seen, you just sort of squeeze that. I think you have to loosen that off. It's like a safety almost. Let's see how. It's not really rushing out like it did. I think the tube still must be a bit blocked. I think it is. I have to kind of see what we can do. This may be going to be as good as this gets. This could well be a failure, but like I say, it's fine. Something's gone wrong here, because it's coming out without me holding the trigger down. Trying to work out what's happening here. I think the tube is a bit blocked, really. I think it's time to attempt something that might be a bit stupid. Oh, hang on, it's kind of sorted itself out now. No, not really. Right, cut. I think I'm going to cut this tube down a little bit and then we'll try that again. Right, the tube's much shorter. Let's try that again. That's better. That's more like it. I'm not entirely sure what the plan is here, to be honest, other than kind of get some sort of all over it and see what happens. Which Doesn't seem to be falling down, which kind of wasn't the plan, but we'll see. I think that's the end of the can of foam, actually. Just hold this down, just let the air out. Well, expanding foam, of course, does expand, but not quite maybe as much as sort of to make some nice natural seeming cliff or hillside. I think the thing to do, really, is wait and see what that looks like. So we'll come back to this at some future point, I suppose. It doesn't look very good at the moment, so we'll have to see how that goes. Right, I'm going to charitably describe this as a mixed result. It has kind of done what I thought it would, and it's become firm and attached to the rest, but obviously hasn't quite closed the gap. But what I think, because it's obviously come out a lot further than I wanted it to do as well. So if I use this lovely Sabatier kitchen knife, which is probably, if I wave this on screen for any longer, YouTube will ban the video. If I just cut sort of half along this and make the top flat, I should be able to use the excess to build up this. Obviously you have to do something with the top, but that's what I'm going to try to do now. So I think we're just going to cut it back to about here. I think if I put a slit kind of here, I don't think this is actually as good all the way in the middle of this big lump. It had off of the edge bit that I skimmed off a little bit ago to check, but this knife is getting quite stuck in here actually. Let's sort of pull this off now and see. And let's cut all the way to the base, I don't think. It's a bit gluey. Hopefully the knife is ruined. My girlfriend won't be very happy if it is. It's a bit like meringue, this stuff. I'm saying, all I'm sort of thinking is I'm glad I didn't use my razor saw for this. I think that'd be well worth it. Oh dear. Well, on the one hand, this should probably be good because it should probably let the innards dry. So there is that. Let's try. Maybe trying one of the smaller lumps first with anything to do. First thing definitely do is go and clean this knife because it's not really cutting anymore. And then we'll sort of have a go at doing what I described earlier. Okay, after several fairly tense minutes of scrubbing, you can see this knife is now mostly clean. So let's try again. I'm going to slightly move the tripod here because I think we're going to sort of come down this sort of corner part. So I think if I move the tripod quite a bit further around, and then I come to the other side of it, perhaps. Let's do these camera skills. You can see the rest of the layout there. Quite a lot of guff on it at the moment. So that area obviously was quite thick with the expanding foam. This area here is less thick, so I'm hoping this will be cured a bit better, sort of all the way through. Let's have a look. So again, we'll cut. Seems to be. You will keep touching this loose stuff. I think we'll do the same, and just for sort of trial's sake, put a cut in here. Okay. Right, now I might be getting somewhere, because now you can see kind of that's not quite right, but now layered up and suitably shaped, that's kind of got what I was going for. This is obviously also nice and light, being that it is just foam. So you pop that bit up there. This bit can wait. But then again, sort of things like that, suitably shaped again. This is sort of definitely potential here, I'd have said. I'm very glad I did this on the paper, because obviously it's peeling off with the paper. If I'd done it straight onto the table, I mean, there is a bit actually stuck onto the table. Is it going to come off easily? Not particularly. Took some of the paint off as well, so definitely the right idea here. Let's try some of this. See, some of it is still a bit kind of, that's obviously expanding foam there, but with the backing on it, and I think maybe plaster bandage, sort of all sorts of classic ideas to maybe top off this fairly non-standard idea, I think there's sort of potential. This has actually moved here, by the look of it. That's better. And then the whole thing has obviously moved a little bit. It seems to be sort of slightly stuck. I guess there is some dampness. Oh, there we go, that's lifted off. So that's a usable bit. That's actually one of the bits I think that was pre-done, which gave me this idea. But again, we can kind of incorporate that in somewhere. I'm going to try and line it up about the same, I think. I've absolutely no idea what you would use to glue this kind of thing with, but yeah, I'm happy actually. Makes a bit of a change. That's all a bit damp and horrible in there, so that bit's going to have to wait. This sort of pit of sarlacc stuff's all quite gooey still. If I sort of, yeah, look, that's sort of uncured foam. That may well still that may well still expand actually. So yeah, it's kind of moving a bit. So I'll maybe leave that to dry. Obviously, I have to cut this part off as well, where it's kind of cut open, and shape this corner a bit. But I think this is going to work. The overhang is going to need some work doing to it, and probably another bit just to going over to the top. But yeah, I'm more optimistic about this now than I was after I just sprayed it, and I thought it was all going to be a bin job and sort of remake the top of the tunnel with the polystyrene sheet. I'm trying to spin to show this to you, but because I'm a bit of a noob, I've unscrewed the wrong part of my tripod. Here. Yeah, so, I mean, it looks alright. It doesn't look alright, but if I sort of start holding things like this, it's looking alright. A bit of imagination, please, sort of paint and that kind of thing. I think that's okay. Got a tunnel mouth. This is technically the right one. Obviously, this goes a bit back further on the board. Yeah, a bit of imagination, please, but I think that's looking all right. I'll have to see how this progresses when I can next do something to it, which will probably be when I have a bit more expanding foam, or at least when in there's sort of dried up a bit. So, yes, ta-ta for now. Right, I've done a bit of fettling, and this is where we are now. So we have a sort of a complete cliffside, I suppose. I have to sort of cut that to accommodate the fact that the track is on a curve. I've got some of this. The Hornby scale rock, which I think is just plaster bandage, which is sort of Hornby rebagged. So I'm going to have a go at applying this over this, because obviously all these sort of caverns are not very cliff-ish, and hopefully well, we'll come back after that's done and hopefully that will look good. Okay, I did say I wasn't going to do any tutorial of doing that plaster bandage, but then I decided against it because then it's basically just this video is me rambling on and not really showing anything useful. So the plaster bandage I have is this Hornby Scale Scenic Scale Rock, which is just a Hornby brand of plaster bandage. And to be fair, it's probably more expensive than a sort of a generic-y plaster bandage, but as I've sort of mentioned, the Hornby Visitor Centre is my local model shop, so that's just where I go. So it comes in this sort of sealed up tube, which I have to obviously get into. And then what I have with this, I have a little ex-Chinese container full of water. So this can make quite a dusty mess, so don't really try and do this over sort of real track work. I sort of don't mind this siding here because it doesn't really get used for anything. I'm also going to use some gloves because that makes everything better, because then my hands aren't filthy if I have to touch anything. These gloves really are not the right size for my freakishly large hands. In fact, this one is just broken. So maybe we'll just try one glove and be a bit gentle with it. Last time I did this, when I did the rest of it, I had gloves that were the right size, so that's my excuse. My girlfriend's only 5 foot, which is why we have tiny, tiny gloves. So it's kind of a... Yes, that'll do. So all you do to apply plaster bandage is take an amount of it off the roll, cut it, and then wet it, and then apply it to that. So I'm just going to move this tunnel mouth, which I had to cut away some of the expanded foam to fit that tunnel mouth in where it's got to sit, and even then I'm not entirely sure it's in the right place. But let's just cut a nice square like that, wet it thoroughly, nice wetting, and then pull it out, sort of hear it crackling away like a bowl of cereal, and then just apply it to whatever it is you wish to apply it to. Now, because there's already some plaster bandage down, it almost sticks to it straight away like glue. You can see it doesn't really stick to this foam, but it is sticking to the higher up plaster bandage. So I think what I'm going to do is just pin it into place with a cocktail stick. I won't do it on this side because the whole point almost of plaster bandage is to layer it up. So we'll do that, and then I'll pop a pin in to hold the two bits down. So just wetted, thoroughly wetted. Oh, you can hear that nice crackling action. And then apply to the cliff face. Now I'm just happy to sort of let this float, but the whole good thing with plaster bandage is it will conform to whatever shape you kind of want it to. So now that's there like that. I'm going to get another couple of cocktail sticks. Let's put one in here. Oh, let's make sure it stays. The good thing is as well, while it's wet, you have almost working time with it. Let's just put one here. It shouldn't come loose because it should be pinned to the dry plaster bandage, but it's always worth it. Now, these sort of underhangs, and perhaps not that common, you wouldn't really see that on rocks in the UK, but you can sort of do all sorts with this, and you can use filler after the fact and things like that. So this is mainly just how to use this actual plaster bandage stuff. Let's let that crackle away. Just to cover this bit at the bottom down here. Ah, now this is the part I think I might have to get my second hand involved. I really wish I wouldn't have to. I'm going to have to hold this to the side. Ooh, balls. Now, again, this can be done in layers, and also, if needs be, just apply a bit of extra water to it. So that's like that. I'm going to let that all dry, and then I will do the rest of it. We'll do that off camera. I just want to do a really quick little bit to show how it is actually done, to make the video kind of some sort of how-to guide. But yeah, this is applying plaster bandage. This is just an offcut I'd cut off from here, but the good thing about this is you can just wet it and stick it back on wherever you so wish. So I'm going to sort of stick it on here, sort of mould it to the edge, and then that will give something for the bit that has to go down there to cling on to. This isn't really holding that well on this one, but it's all trial and error. Get a nice bit of wetting up the top there, and then once this has dried and gone sticky, we can just sort of wet this bottom. I did have a spray bottle. I don't know if you might have seen that loitering earlier in the video, which you can use to sort of wet a whole area to just hold things down. So that's how to use plaster bandage there. And what we'll do after this is, I think we'll come back when this has all been bandaged properly. I probably will leave the top for now. Go over it with a bit of filler to fill in all the little holes, I think, and then it will be a case of painting it in a sort of a rock coloured paint, and then sort of that's kind of it for now, I think, for this bit of scenery. I'm going to do this with a fresh part, although you can reuse it. That's obviously not the best. I've put this bit of kitchen roll down just to stop the bottom, where any art would touch the bottom, fusing to the baseboard and then it all cracking when it comes apart. Give another thin slither for the bottom, give that a go. Lovely. So going to let that dry now, so yeah. Okay, as you can see, I've moved on to painting. With apologies to anyone who may find this a bit jarring, I have tried to, obviously I do add these transitions on here, but this is the first time that any of my videos are being filmed in not wide angle, so it's sort of showing sort of a closer look. So I've been painting it grey to look like rocks, then we'll dry brush some white over the top of that, I daren't say. Now, to make this rock coloured paint, what I've been doing is I've got an old Chinese food container, got this black ready mix paint from somewhere like The Range, I believe this one is. I'm just, there we go, just putting a medium sized dollop in there, like that. And then I'm adding this Tesco's white paint, which is a lot liquidier and a lot cheaper as well, $1.30 a bottle. Just sort of an amount, and then slowly mixing that up to create a grey. Now, normally, when you mix paint, what you should do is mix enough to do like a whole project, because what you don't want to do is get to the end and then realise that you haven't made enough paint and have to try and do the mix again, because invariably you won't get that mix right. So if ever you're painting something like if you do 5-inch gauge modelling and you want to paint a loco in a loco colour, if you get paint mixed up, make sure you get absolutely more than enough. Now, because this is for a rock face, I'm actually intentionally doing it in stages with the hope, a bit more white, close, with the hope that it will create some sort of variation as you would find in a rock face in real life. Now, all of them have been quite dark so far, so I might add some extra white to this just to make it sort of obviously very different. I think this has now got enough in it to the point where I can't really hold it to the camera to mix it, because it will start to spill out, so give it a go. But even with sort of the natural rock colours, that also means that you don't even have to mix this that well. A little bit of natural marbling of the colours is fine. So I've got a nice big amount of it here. Now, because this is being painted onto plaster bandage, which is quite absorbing, it does kind of absorb into it, so it is often worth going over multiple areas at once. Let's just quickly wake my screen up so I can see exactly where it's pointing, and then just start to apply it. Now, I don't really have an idea past this. I want this to be a sort of a rocky hillock. Normally people use sort of reference images to get them at something to go off of, but I'm just kind of doing my own thing and painting it a rock colour. And then what I'll probably do, I've decided, is for ledges like this bit that I'm painting at the moment and up here, we'll probably static grass those to sort of give it a bit of extra colour, maybe get some of those wild flower sort of little plants that you can get just to add a bit of colour to what is otherwise going to be quite a big grey block, but it certainly looks better than the white of the plaster bandage. And what I think I'm going to do to this is add even more white paint. I want to get quite a light colour on here, over where the tunnel mouth goes. Now, the tunnel mouths I have, which are a Metcalfe kit, the stone on that is grey, and it's actually not too dissimilar to the colour of the grey paint that I'm making up here, so it will make it look like those bricks, rocks, etc. are local, from the same area, quarried from the same area that this that my layout is set, because obviously the rock colour will be the same. With the naturally quite bumpy texture that this plaster bandage has left, sometimes it does pay to just, instead of brushing it on like I'm doing, dip the brush directly in, get it sort of deep, and then just sort of prod it at it, and it will fill any deeper areas, as you may have just been able to see it do there. Just try to let that run. I don't really have any runs in it because rock doesn't do that. I see the plaster bandage is moving slightly, but that's not really a problem. None of it has delaminated from itself in doing this. I haven't noticed anyway. It's all sort of quite firmly together, even if it's not really attached to the expanding foam underlayer. Suppose I should make some sort of reference to Bob Ross or something at this point. He's sort of spitting, but I don't know any colours really other than, what is it, titanium white and cadmium yellow. I suppose that can count as titanium white. Just cover it all. The good thing of this is it just being paint. If I do end up changing any of this, it just will come cut through. It's not like I'm adding a coating to it, it's just colour, isn't it? I haven't really decided what I'm going to do for the top yet. As has been mentioned, there is the intention of adding some sort of canal scene on the layout, which might happen above here, just make it sort of a field with a canal running through it and trees and things. You might have noticed from videos, or indeed maybe other parts of this video, that it tends to have a little Hornby Scaledale abandoned sort of farmhouse and lots of trees up here, which I've obviously moved because to paint the other end of this I've had to move it. You might be seeing my pyjamas here. I promise I'm not lazy. This is one of the most active days I've had for ages, hence why I'm in my pyjamas. So, presented with apologies, if that's what you can say. Oh, this is going quite well. What I'm probably going to do here is a cut, actually, because what's happening is I'm painting in silence and all of you are going to watch other videos that are more interesting than this. So I'm going to cut this and then we'll do something else for the end. Hello, I am back. Unbelievable, isn't it? It's been a while. Lots of things have happened. The Luftwaffe have arrived. I've rewatched most of the video that I've just filmed, and most of it you see looking at my back, so hopefully my fairly monotone commentary is amusing enough to entertain you, because yes, it wasn't filmed very well. Apologies. The cliff face is essentially as done as it's going to be for a while. That half of the tunnel mouth is in place. The other half, I don't know if you can sort of see that the track comes a bit close in there, so that if the tunnel mouth is in, there's some clashes. So I need to work out really what to do with that. But this is how it's looking now. And there is a nice bit of variation in the colour here. This sort of part over here, that is not a shadow. That is a much darker bit of rock. And yeah, there's just some really nice colour variation. Obviously it needs some more doing to it. The top needs grassing over, and potentially is where a canal is going to go for the boats. Some lovely trees. But this is just sort of coming together. I think every layout should have a tunnel. It makes it seem like the layout's actually going somewhere. And that's effectively how to make a cliff face, I guess. Yeah, I'm really happy with how it looks. I think obviously bits of subtle detailing aside, so sort of a bit of static grass here and there on some ledges and some bushes and twigs and things, I think it looks great. I think it looks completely adequate. Certainly if I come sort of further back, tell you what first I'll do, I'll move some of these letters. As I've explained before, the layout being a big open space in this room kind of just becomes a place where things are put down, but that looks, I think, completely fine from a reasonable point of view. I'm the only person that ever sees this layout anyway. I have no friends that come around my house and play trains with me. It's very sad. So that looks completely adequate to me. I'm more than happy with that. I need to put the other tunnel mouth in over that side, but that is my cliff face done, and we'll move on to something else next, I think.